Welcome to Globewise Entertainment, where forgotten gems, cult classics, and hidden Hollywood stories come to life. Today we're diving into the dark corners of horror history, with 7 underground horror films that defied the odds. These aren't your typical mainstream scream fests. These are the bold, banned, bizarre, and brilliant films that rose from the shadows, gaining loyal followings, shaking up the genre, and proving that horror doesn't need a big budget to leave a lasting scar. If you're a true fan of offbeat cinema, you're in for a chilling ride. Face screaming in fear. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that button now and join our community of fearless film lovers. And don't forget to drop a comment below. Which of these underground horror gems shocked you the most? Or did we miss one that deserves the spotlight? Let's get into it, if you dare. 1. The Last House on the Left, 1972. To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie. It's only a movie. In 1972, a soft-spoken former humanities professor named Wes Craven shocked the world with a film so raw, so disturbing it was banned, burned, and boycotted. The Last House on the Left told the story of 2 teenage girls kidnapped and brutalized by a group of sadistic criminals, only for fate to twist when those very killers unknowingly take refuge in the home of one victim's parents. What followed was a harrowing descent into vengeance. Shot on a minuscule budget with unknown actors, it looked rough, unpolished, even real. That gritty realism disturbed critics and audiences alike. The violence felt too close, too believable. But as the smoke cleared and the controversy raged, something extraordinary happened. The film refused to die. Censored in the UK for decades and labeled a video nasty, Last House became a whispered legend in horror circles. Over time it was re-evaluated not just as shock cinema, but as a daring, brutal mirror of society's thirst for revenge. And thus, Wes Craven didn't just debut a horror film. He unleashed a legacy. 2. Eraserhead, 1977. The nightmare no one expected. In the smoky shadows of 1970s experimental cinema, a young man named David Lynch quietly crafted a black-and-white fever dream that no studio dared to touch. With almost no budget, scraps of film, and surreal imagination, he spent 5 years bringing Eraserhead to life, working night shifts as a janitor to fund his project, often sleeping on set. The result? A haunting, otherworldly journey into the mind of a man trapped in a decaying industrial world, raising a grotesque, inhuman baby. Dialogue was sparse, the imagery was bizarre, and audiences left theaters either stunned or disturbed. Mainstream critics hated it. Test screenings were confusing disasters. But then came the midnight crowds, the misfits, artists, and cult film lovers, who saw something bold, something terrifyingly true about fear, fatherhood, and isolation. From its underground roots, Eraserhead defied all odds. It became a midnight movie legend, launched David Lynch's brilliant and bizarre career, and still stands today as a surreal horror masterpiece unlike anything else. A nightmare born from silence, and yet the world listened. 3. Martyrs, 2008. The Pain Beyond the Flesh. In a quiet corner of France, a young woman named Lucy carries scars not just on her skin but deep within her soul. Years ago, she escaped from an unimaginable place, a cold, cruel dungeon where she was tortured for reasons she couldn't begin to understand. Haunted by the past and the specter of a mysterious creature only she sees, Lucy becomes obsessed with revenge. One day, with her childhood friend Anna at her side, she believes she's found her tormentors, a seemingly normal family in a picturesque home. What begins as a brutal act of vengeance quickly spirals into a descent neither of them could have foreseen. Anna soon uncovers a secret far more horrifying than either of them imagined. A hidden underground cult that believes suffering can bring spiritual enlightenment. Their goal? To create a martyr, someone who can glimpse what lies beyond death through pain. Martyrs isn't just a horror film. It's an ordeal. Graphic, devastating, yet thought-provoking, it was dismissed by many for its extreme violence. But over time it gained a devoted following who saw its deeper message about faith, trauma, and transcendence. Against all odds, Martyrs transformed from banned material into a modern classic, forever redefining the boundaries of horror. 4. Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead, 1992. The bloodiest horror comedy ever made. Before Peter Jackson conquered Hollywood with The Lord of the Rings, he made one of the goriest, wildest horror comedies ever filmed, Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead. Shot in his native New Zealand on a modest budget, the film tells the story of a timid young man named Lionel, whose overbearing mother gets bitten by a mysterious Sumatran rat monkey and slowly turns into a flesh-eating zombie. But this isn't your typical undead flick. What follows is a riotous, stomach-churning descent into chaos, complete with lawnmower massacres, undead babies and gallons, literally gallons of blood. Mainstream critics didn't know what to make of it. Too gross for general audiences, too funny for hardcore horror purists, Dead Alive was dumped into limited release and quietly vanished from theaters. But in the shadows, horror fans embraced it. Through word of mouth, late-night VHS rentals, and underground screenings, Dead Alive earned a legendary status. Many now hail it as the greatest splatter film of all time, and a brilliant showcase of Jackson's raw creativity. From bargain bin oddity to cult classic royalty, Dead Alive proved that even the bloodiest of underdogs could defy the odds and become unforgettable. 5. Begotten, 1990. A nightmare etched in celluloid. In a world drained of color where shadows breathe and time seems fractured, a figure cloaked as God sits alone in a crumbling room. In silence and anguish, he disembowels himself, and from this grotesque act, the Earth Mother is born. She rises from the ruin, dragging the remains of her creator into the void, only to be violated and destroyed by faceless nomads. Her child, the Son of Earth, crawls from her corpse fragile and shivering, seeking hope in a landscape of desolation. There is no dialogue, no comfort, only haunting imagery and grainy black and white decay. Made by Elias Murridge on a micro-budget and shot on damaged film stock, Begotten was more of a ritual than a movie, a disturbing poem carved in flickering light. Too abstract for Hollywood and too visceral for festivals, it was nearly buried in obscurity. Yet somehow it survived. Through midnight screenings, whispered word of mouth, and mentions from directors like David Lynch and Marilyn Manson, Begotten became an underground legend, a horrifying meditation on creation, suffering, and the death of meaning itself. It defied the odds by refusing all rules of storytelling, and still left its mark on horror history. 6. The Pikipsy Tapes, 2007. When authorities raided an abandoned house in Poughkeepsie, New York, they weren't prepared for what they'd find. Hidden behind the walls were hundreds of videotapes, each one a chilling record of a serial killer's twisted acts. Torture, deception, death. Every moment filmed in horrifying detail by a faceless predator who stayed one step ahead of the law. What began as a standard investigation turned into a national nightmare. As the tapes played, a portrait emerged, not of a monster but a man so manipulative, so cold, he made his victims doubt their own reality before erasing it completely. The Pikipsy Tapes was deemed too disturbing for release. Pulled from theaters and locked away, the film itself became like the killer it portrayed. Hidden, whispered about, and feared. For years it circulated only in shadows, through bootlegs and urban legends. But true horror finds a way to surface. When it finally received a proper release nearly a decade later, it horrified a new generation, earning its place as one of the most haunting underground horror films ever made. Proof that some nightmares refuse to stay buried. 7. Sleepaway Camp, 1983. The slasher with a secret that shook the genre. In the golden age of 1980s slashers, Sleepaway Camp looked like just another blood-soaked teen camp massacre. Released in 1983 with a low budget and little fanfare, it followed Shy Angela, a quiet girl sent to summer camp after a tragic boating accident claimed her family. At first glance, it seemed to check all the typical slasher boxes: mean teens, suspicious counselors, and a body count rising with every scream. But something felt off. The kills were brutal and inventive, the tone eerier than its slasher cousins, and Angela's silence hid more than just trauma. Then came the ending. That final scene, a chilling, unforgettable twist that still echoes through horror history, changed everything. Audiences were stunned. Critics dismissed it, but horror fans couldn't stop talking about it. VHS rentals skyrocketed. Word spread like wildfire. It wasn't just another camp slasher. It was a psychological bombshell disguised in low-budget gore. Years later, Sleepaway Camp became a cult classic. Its ending is now legendary. And Angela? She became an icon, not for what she did, but for what the film dared to reveal. Against all odds, Sleepaway Camp didn't just survive. It haunted the genre forever. And there you have it, 7 underground horror films that defied the odds and carved their names into cult movie history. From band shockers to low-budget legends, these films proved you don't need studio backing to terrify the world. Which one gave you chills? Or is there an underground horror gem you think deserves to be on this list? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from fellow horror fans. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the darker side of cinema, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to Globewise Entertainment for more forgotten films, cult classics, and wild Hollywood stories you won't hear anywhere else. Until next time, keep your flashlight close. You never know what's lurking in the shadows of film history.